Another tool for application control, or specifically application whitelisting, is AppLocker, which extends the capabilities of SRP and is more configurable. It is a set of group policy settings which are present in Windows 7, 8 and 10, but only in the higher end versions. I believe the Pro version, Ultimate, Enterprise and Education versions have AppLocker, but the Home editions do not, unfortunately. As with software restriction policies, you can get to it by gpedit.msc, which will bring up this local group policy editor if you're doing it on a non-domain machine. And you need to navigate through. Here we are: computer configuration, Windows settings, security settings, application control policies, and then AppLocker. And here we are. So let's open this up. Let me just show you something here. So if I right click here, create new rule, just click next and next. Don't worry about what I've just gone through. I'll go through that in a second. What we've got here is what it calls the primary condition that you would like to create in order to do the whitelisting or the controlling of the applications. AppLocker rules specify which apps are allowed to run on your device. It allows multiple levels of enforcement as well as several methods of recognizing a whitelisted executable. Like, for example, it has the publisher here, which is essentially the signature. So as it says here, select this option if the application you want to create the rule for is signed by the software publisher. So public key cryptography. Then we have files and folders, essentially the path. So create a rule for a specific file or folder path. If you select a folder, all files in the folder will be affected by the rule. And then we have file hashes, which will be a hash run over the file so that you have a unique signature for that file. And as this says here, select this option if you want to create a rule for an application that is not signed. So all of these can be used to identify what it is you're trying to whitelist. You can create rules for what executable files are allowed and denied. So let's just close that. So you can see here you can create rules for what executable files are allowed and denied, Windows install rules, script rules, and packaged app rules. To switch AppLocker on, if you go here and you need to look for the configure rule enforcement, and then you can see these options here. So for each of those rule types that I just showed you, you can decide to switch it on, enforce rules. And you'll see here there is an audit only option. Now you can use auditing to track which applications are being used and then automatically generate rules based on the applications that you've got. So that's a pretty cool option there, makes it much easier to set things up. So essentially you tick the ones that you plan to have rules for and enable them. I'm not going to enable these quite yet because you do have to be careful when you're doing this because you can lock yourself out of the system. So there we go, we would enable that there. So let's imagine we have enabled that. We can see the rules here which we would create. So let's imagine we want to stop someone on this machine from running Visual Studio as an example. So let's create a rule for that. So create new rule. We can skip this screen now, and then we would want a deny. We would select the person, or obviously we could select a group. So let's just stop everybody from using it. And then we can choose publisher, path, or hash. In this case, I'm going to choose the path and prevent them from using anything in the Visual Studio folder. And there we are, the Visual Studio folder. Click OK. Next. This is asking us if there's any exceptions, so if there's something within that folder that we would want to allow. So no. And then we can add a description there and then create. Okay, what it's asking us here now is, do we want to create default rules? And we're going to do that so I can show you what they are. So you may or may not want the default rules, but I'll show you what they are. So let's click yes. And here we can see it has created the default rules, which are these, and it's created the deny everyone to Visual Studio. Now the default rules are that everyone can run files in the program files folder and also the Windows folder. So it's essentially enabling everything that's installed. It's making the assumption that you want everybody to access everything that is installed. And here it's also allowing the administrators to access all files. So that's the default rules. You can, of course, delete the rules quite simply, or any rule that you want, just by clicking delete, or edit the rules simply by going through here. You would want to whitelist the applications or publishers or paths, essentially, that you trust, and deny everything else. That's the basic principle. We do want to check that the service is actually running, because if the service is not running and starting, then you're not going to get very far here. So if we go to services, and you can see there we've got application identity, double click on this. This is essentially the service for AppLocker. We need that changed to automatic so that this comes on automatically. Otherwise, it'll start and AppLocker won't work, so it'll be pretty pointless. So we want to enable that. So let's just delete these, and I'll show you another thing that you can do. Another way of using this, you can build your machine, have everything on it that you're happy with, all the applications that you're happy with being run, and then you can create an automatic rule set. So if we right click here, we've got the automatically generate rules. Then it's going to ask for the path. In this case, we're looking at the program files because we're looking at executable rules. Obviously, we can select groups here and individuals. This will give you an idea. And file hash is selected, and also digitally signed file. So as preference, it'll look for the digital signature because that is more reliable, and then it will look for the hash. And click next. And then this will take a little bit of time while it generates the rules. And we can see there we've got 23 publisher rules, some file hash rules. You can view the files that were analyzed. You can select and deselect them. And then create. And then it's going to ask you about the default rules again. So let's click yes. And there you go. Pretty cool, isn't it? So it creates all of those for you. So as long as you've got an environment that you know is pretty static, this can work quite well. But as I said before, be very careful though that you don't lock yourself out. The Microsoft guide is quite good, which you can see here. Check that one out. Another couple of useful guides is this one here from Sans. And also NIST have produced this guide to application whitelisting, which is worth reading as well. We've talked through SRP and now AppLocker. There is an article there on combining the two together and a comparison here of their features. So let's talk about AppLocker vulnerabilities. What you can see here is Casey Smith using reg SRV32 function to bypass AppLocker. As I have mentioned, whitelisting isn't perfect. Vulnerabilities have been found, but hopefully when they are found, they are fixed quickly. When you listen to this lecture now, this vulnerability may or may not be fixed. Who knows? But there you could see Casey bypassing AppLocker with reg serv32 function. And there's an article on it there on how that was done. And of course, other vulnerabilities will come and go. There's a good video here on general application whitelisting vulnerabilities and exploiting application whitelisting if you're interested. AppLocker on Windows is another recommended layer of protection for application control for whitelisting, but of course it's not perfect, as I've just demonstrated. If malware or an attacker can gain admin privileges, they can disable it, but a useful layer of protection.